Just go home and never come back. What? While I was out, I found out my mom fainted. When I got to the hospital, she wouldn't even look at me or talk to me. I couldn't understand why. I've been taking care of her ever since she started using a wheelchair. Why would she treat me like this? Then I saw the boxes my husband, Matt, had brought, and it all made sense. Matt and I have been married for 3 years and have been happy together. He's a kind and great cook. But things changed 6 months ago. My mom had an accident and ended up in a wheelchair, so we decided to live together. We moved to a new apartment because our old one was too small for all three of us. The new place was bigger, nicer, and had fewer steps, which my mom loved. She was happy to have better meals after living alone for so long. My parents are divorced, and I never saw my dad, so I'm really grateful to my mom for raising me alone. I thought living together would be a way to show my appreciation, and seeing her happy made me feel good. One day, my mom had heat stroke after the weather forecast warned about the heat, and she was taken to the hospital. When I got there, the doctor said she fainted in a room without air conditioning. We had checked the weather together earlier that morning, so I couldn't understand why this happened. Maybe she couldn't reach the remote control for the air conditioning, but I couldn't remember where I had put it after using it for her before bed. Maybe it was my fault she almost died. Thankfully, she woke up, but when I asked if she couldn't find the remote, she shook her head. I felt relieved, but then I wondered why she didn't turn on the air conditioning. Why, Mom? She just looked out the window. Why won't you talk to me? I asked. Just go home. What? She didn't say anything else. She wouldn't look at me or talk to me. My mom always insisted on making eye contact when speaking to people, and she had taught me the same since I was little. Even when I was rebellious as a teenager and said hurtful things, she always looked me in the eye. This was the first time she acted so cold, and I didn't even get to say goodbye before I left the hospital. It was so hot as I walked back, sweat running down my neck. I wondered why she didn't turn on the air conditioning when it was so hot outside. Luckily, my mom was able to call the ambulance herself before fainting, but I couldn't stop thinking about what might have happened if Matt and I weren't home during the day and came back to find her passed out. It was the right thing to call the ambulance, but I couldn't accept that I wasn't told about it. When my mom became wheelchair-bound, I had told her to call the office if anything happened because I'm usually at work all day. I had to go back to the hospital with her clothes and other things, but I was afraid I'd take my frustration out on her if I saw her face again. When I opened the door to our apartment, cold air hit me. You're back already? Yeah. I heard about your mom fainting, so I left work early. Matt is a great husband. Even before we got married, he suggested we share the household chores because we both work. He loves cooking so much that he makes curry from scratch almost every day. I felt guilty because I worked long hours and left earlier and came back later than he did. But he always helped with cleaning and laundry without complaining. Since my mom started living with us, I've needed to help her more, so I really appreciated Matt's support. I was grateful he came home early for my mom. When he asked about her condition, I told him she had to be hospitalized, and he just said, I see. What are those boxes? I had been wondering about the boxes next to Matt. I thought they were deliveries, but I hadn't heard anything about packages arriving today. These boxes, they were folded and stored under the bed, so I just put them together. That's not what I meant. Wait, you put them together. So they're not deliveries? I looked at one box with its lid open in front of Matt. When I peeked inside, I saw something familiar, my mom's clothes. Wait, what? Despite my confusion, Matt didn't seem surprised at all. Since things turned out this way, let's not let her come back home, even if she gets out of the hospital. We should put her in a care facility. He handed me a brochure that had somehow been left on the couch. She must have been stressed living with us. It's sad that her stress built up until this happened. My whole life revolves around her now, and I'm starting to wonder why I married you. This situation could relieve everyone's stress. Before we moved in with her, I looked forward to cooking for you every day. I planned meals for the next day, and I was happy when you dried my hair after my bath. But now, you don't pay attention to me. You're not just her caretaker. She'll understand if it's for her daughter's happiness. Some of what Matt said bothered me, but when he mentioned that living together had been stressful for her, it strangely made sense. So that's why my mom didn't look at me. I didn't want to believe it, but I quietly pointed out that she fainted because of heat stroke, not stress. But Matt quickly responded. She must have been so stressed that she almost died from heat stroke. I started to feel like maybe he was right. I had been happy living with my mom, but I hadn't known she was stressed. I didn't realize Matt had been feeling lonely either. I didn't understand anything. When I returned to the hospital with things for her, my mom still wouldn't look at me. I'm sorry, Mom. Our life together must have been stressful for you, right? That's why you didn't turn on the air conditioning, right? My mom listened quietly to my apology, but then I saw her start trembling. Mom. I rushed over to her and looked at her face. Tears started falling from her eyes, one after another. What's wrong, Mom? My mom mentioned Matt's name and said something I couldn't believe. Apparently, Matt had been saying terrible things about her behind my back, calling her a bad mother who was ruining my happiness. He had forced my mom to do household chores in her wheelchair, saying things like, "You're not completely immobile and you're living in my house. Don't you think you should help with the housework?" He also told her not to use electricity during the day, not to watch TV, and especially not to use the air conditioning. He threatened that if she told me anything, he would divorce me. He even reminded her of the struggles she faced raising me as a single mom and asked how she'd feel if he divorced me because of her. She couldn't speak up to protect my marriage. I never once thought my mom caused me any problems because my dad wasn't around. I'm sorry I didn't realize this sooner. We both cried and apologized to each other. Despite feeling guilty toward my mom, my anger at Matt grew the moment I stopped crying. I stormed into the room, ready to confront him, and found him busy moving more boxes. There were even more boxes now than before. Was this all really my mom's stuff? What the heck is all this? I shouted, banging my fist on one of the boxes to express my frustration. But Matt seemed calm and in a good mood. I brought them from my parents' house, he casually answered, ripping open a box and pulling out a strange ornament I remembered from my in-laws' house. Why would you bring something like that here? Because my parents are moving in today. What? Since I've let your mom live with us, it's only fair that my parents live here too. I'll still cook like before, and my mom will help with the housework. That way, your mom won't be stressed, and everyone will be happy. This is the best plan. I couldn't hold back my anger. I told you before about living with my mom, didn't I? Why did you discuss this with me first? There's no way you could have planned all this in one day. Something's not right. Did you do this because you have something to hide? This is my house. I don't need your permission, Matt replied, sounding annoyed, and then pretended not to hear me. At that moment, my in-laws arrived to help unpack. I heard your mom is going to a facility after she's discharged. That must be hard, my mother-in-law said, holding my hand gently as if she truly cared. Since Matt stayed quiet, I had planned to confront my in-laws, but I lost my confidence. It might not be the best time to say this, but Matt told us about living together before your mom moved in. My mother-in-law continued. He said he wanted to take care of us and live together once your marriage settled down. We were really looking forward to it, thinking of you as our own daughter. She didn't seem to notice the tension between Matt and me, and my father-in-law was already unpacking. I decided to go along with the conversation for now. I'm also looking forward to living with you, I said. I'm glad you came so quickly, but wasn't it tough getting everything ready in just one day? One day, about 3 months ago, Matt called us, she replied. He said your mom would move into a facility once you were ready, so he told us to start preparing little by little. Oh. He'd been planning for over 3 months to get rid of my mom, all while trying to be the perfect son to his parents. I was surprised when he told us to come today, but he said he didn't want you to feel lonely. You know, he's such a family-oriented guy. Matt had asked his parents to come today so my mom wouldn't have a place to come back to. His mother, completely unaware, looked happy and proud of her son. Your husband's parents are so happy. As his wife, you should be happy too, my father-in-law said to me as Matt sat there with a smirk. Where did you put my mom's things? I asked Matt, and he pointed to my smartphone with an annoyed look on his face. When I opened the message, there was a link to a rental storage company. I'll be right back, I said, leaving the house despite my mother-in-law's worried look. When I opened the door to the rental storage, I was speechless. My mom's things were thrown in there carelessly. The blankets and stuffed animals I had bought for her to feel comfortable were just piled up on the floor. Matt probably didn't like the idea of my mom relaxing at home. He hadn't even bothered to pack her things in boxes. I couldn't stand it anymore, so I called him from outside the rental storage. You've gone too far. How could you do this to my mom and still pretend to be a good husband? You're being so annoying. If you keep this up, we're getting a divorce. I love my mom and dad, and they love me. I used to love you too, but if I'm not the most important person to you, then I don't need you anymore. What? Stop acting like a child. Your mom won't be around forever anyway. It's great for you that you can live off the inheritance. Would have been easier if she had just passed away. Then we wouldn't have any money problems or have to worry about her things. I could almost hear him laughing at me. I was such a fool for marrying him. I'll gladly divorce you, I said and hung up. Without hesitation, I divorced him. I couldn't stand being with him any longer. So I rented a new apartment and started living with my mom, who had been discharged from the hospital. My ex called me. What do you mean I have to move out by the end of this month? After all, the apartment was under my mom's name. We had rented the apartment in my mom's name, but Matt had thought it was bought with my money. He had only helped me look at apartments, but I paid the rent and utilities because I made more money. Matt handled groceries and helped with cooking and chores. He seemed to have believed the apartment was his too. What? It wasn't under your name. I thought it was our joint property because I thought it was in your name. Since you only care about your mom now, I've been under so much stress, and I was planning to get compensation for this house as alimony. This is fraud. He kept talking, confessing things without me asking. I plan to kick out your mom and make things easier for us. I was even thinking about divorcing you and taking the apartment, just like I texted. I sold the house already. You need to leave by the end of the month because there are people interested in buying it. If you don't, I'll report you for illegal occupation. Don't mess with me. This is my house. His argument was ridiculous, but I smiled and said, if you really want the house, go to the bank and buy it with your own money. He went silent and I hung up, blocking him. It seemed like he had some past debt issues, since he couldn't even get a credit card when we applied together at the store. He wouldn't be able to get enough money to buy the apartment. As expected, he sent more messages to my mom's phone, begging and saying things like, please help me. Let's talk again. I love you. I don't know what his parents thought, but I figured they'd handle it their way. I wasn't concerned about Matt anymore. I tried to block him from my mom's phone, but she said, it's funny. Let's leave it like this for a while. She had been laughing at his messages and drinking beer for the past few days. But you know, I do feel bad that my wheelchair caused your divorce. Matt and his parents were kind to me until this happened. Mom, stop, you're the victim here. You were just caught up in his childish pride. Don't feel bad at all. Honestly, I'm grateful. If I hadn't found out about his real personality, I'd have been stuck with him for years. I can't imagine dealing with his tantrums while trying to raise kids. I would have been exhausted both mentally and physically. I'm always grateful to you, Mom.